Welcome back to Smell the Roses, Rosebuds. Come in here, gather around the table, and have a seat. Because today we are not talking about a roast. We are talking about what happens when a comedian confuses being edgy with being empty. We are talking about what happens when dark humor becomes a little lazy hiding place for cruelty. And we're talking about what happens when a room full of celebrities laughs because they are uncomfortable, because they are trained to clap like monkeys, or because nobody wants to be the first person to say, actually, no, Netflix, that was disgusting. Now, this is going to be a long one, so get comfortable. Here we go. All right, so a roast is supposed to be disrespectful. A roast is supposed to be uncomfortable. A roast is supposed to drag people's hairlines, their height, divorces, affairs, bad movies, failed albums, fake relationships, and they could even, poke at someone's midlife crisis. Okay, that is the contract that you basically signed when you agreed to be the subject of a roast. Okay, you literally walk into a roast knowing that somebody is going to pick you apart and talk about your business. Okay, but what this comedian guy, Tony Hinchcliffe, I believe is how you say his last name, said during the Netflix roast while roasting Kevin Hart was not just a spicy take. It was not just pushing the envelope, so to speak. It was not just comedy being comedy. The joke dragged George Floyd's death into the room like it was a prop. And I'm sorry, but no. I'm going to have to object to dead bodies being dragged into the room for cheap pot shots. Okay, because there's a difference between a joke that makes people uncomfortable because it exposes some kind of truth, and a joke that makes people uncomfortable because it is spiritually nasty. And that joke was nasty. I don't care what you say. All right. So in this clip here, I'm going to let you all hear what Tony actually said.
Right now, George Floyd is looking up at us all, laughing so hard that he can't breathe. The black community is so proud of you. Right now, George Floyd is looking up at us all, laughing so hard that he can't breathe.
Okay, so he said something along the lines of the black community is so proud of you, Kevin. Right now, George Floyd is looking up at us, laughing so hard he can't breathe. Now, that was an interesting statement that George Floyd is looking up at us. Did anybody catch that? Do you feel like he used the word up at us because he was referencing that maybe George Floyd would be watching from hell? Think on that for a minute. Excuse me, what? Like, what are we doing? Because at what point did a man's final moments become a punchline at a celebrity roast? And how dare you assume that George Floyd would be looking up from hell laughing about this shit? I can't. At what point did I Can't Breathe become something to remix for laughs? And at what point did we decide that Black grief, public trauma, and police violence against Black people could be casually sprinkled into a joke because somebody wanted to look fearless on stage? No, sir. That was not fearless. That was just cheap. And let me say this clearly. The issue is not that people cannot make jokes about serious topics, because they can. Comedy has always dealt with painful subjects. The best comedians can talk about death, race, politics, addiction, poverty, violence, and tragedy in a way that makes you laugh and think at the same time. So don't give me that. But see, that actually requires you to have some skill. That requires perspective. It requires humanity. That requires a point. This joke had no point except for shock. And shock without substance is not genius. It's just noise in a perfectly fit blazer, because the dude's suit was actually really nice. Now, let's bring Kevin Hart into the room. Kevin Hart was the target of the roast, and Tony was supposedly roasting Kevin. So the setup was about Kevin being admired by the Black community. That's fine. There are 1,000 ways to joke about that. Okay. One thing that I thought about that I thought was funny, or something that they could reference, was that, he could have made a joke about Kevin being everywhere, like movies, commercials, tequila, fitness ads, podcasts, motivational speeches, animated voiceovers, probably hiding inside of somebody's Alexa, funny. Or, maybe the fact that Kevin is so mainstream that every Black family has at least maybe one or two uncles or cousins who actually thinks Kevin Hart owes them some money, right? There are ways to roast Kevin Hart without dragging George Floyd into it. That is why this moment bothers me so much. It's not just that it was offensive, it was actually pretty lazy. It was a shortcut. It was a comedian's version of like throwing some furniture into a room and staging it and calling it some kind of like HGTV interior design. No, sir, you actually made a hot mess. It doesn't look good at all. Now everybody wants to hide behind this phrase called dark humor. And I want to talk about that too, because dark humor is not just the worst thing possible or saying the worst thing possible and then staring at the audience like, ta-da! Are you brave enough to laugh at it? No, that's not comedy. That's literally a hostage situation with a microphone. Dark humor only works when there is intelligence behind it. It works when the joke reveals some kind of freaking hypocrisy, pain, absurdity, or truth. It works when the target is chosen carefully. But when the target is a dead Black man who's killing, was watched around the world, whose final words became a protest chant, whose death carried the weight of generations of pain, you better have more than "I can't breathe" as your fucking punchline, bro. Because that phrase is not random. That phrase is not neutral anymore. That phrase is attached to trauma. Anytime you hear it, even when it's somebody saying it because they're having an asthma attack, you think of George Floyd. It is attached to video footage people could barely watch. It's attached to protests, outrage, grief, and a national reckoning. So when you use it as a laugh line, people are not being too sensitive. Stop it. They are just responding to the fact that you took something sacredly painful and treated it like seasoning. And people wonder why the backlash came. Are you serious? The backlash came because you cannot walk into a room, step on a wound, and then blame people for their bleeding. Okay. Let me calm down because this is like annoying to me. Now, let's address people saying, smell the roses. It was a roast. What did you expect? Well, I expected jokes, good ones. I expected disrespect that I could laugh at. I expected mess. I expected somebody to violate Kevin Hart's height for the 900th time. I expected somebody to say The Rock carried him through every movie like a designer handbag. I expected jokes about Kevin being too short. His driver's license photo was shot by a drone. I don't know, something like that. That's a roast. But using George Floyd's death as a throwaway line is not the same thing as making fun of Kevin Hart's height or movie catalog. We need to stop pretending all offensive jokes are equal. They are not. Some jokes punch up, some punch sideways, some punch down, but this one actually drags somebody out of the grave. And that is what made this feel so foul. It did not challenge power. It did not expose some kind of fucking hypocrisy. It did not say anything clever about Kevin, Hollywood, race, police brutality, public grief, or celebrity culture. It just reached into Black people's pain, pulled out a phrase everybody recognizes, and tried to sell it as bold comedy. And I reject that. Now, let's talk about the audience, us, people in that room when the joke was told, because the audience matters. We matter. When something like that gets said in a big celebrity room, the reaction can look complicated. I know, because I've been in these spaces and I understand production. Some people are going to laugh because they actually think it's funny. Some people laugh because they are shocked at the fact that you had the gall to say that out of your mouth. Some people are going to laugh because everyone else is laughing. And some people laugh because cameras are rolling and no one wants to look uptight about it. But let's be real. A lot of people know when something is off. You can feel it. When my husband and I were watching it, neither one of us laughed, and we just looked at each other, not knowing exactly what to say. There is a difference between a room exploding because the joke landed and a room making noise because people are trying to survive the awkwardness. That is not laughter. That is social panic. And that is where the celebrity machine actually is a little weird to me, because in these rooms, people are conditioned to protect the show, protect the vibe, protect the brand, protect the edit. But sometimes, y'all, and shout out to Regina, sometimes somebody needs to protect decency, just human fucking decency. Okay. Sometimes people need to just sit there with a straight face and let the joke die on stage, because every joke does not deserve a laugh. Every mic drop does not deserve applause. And every edgy comedian is not some damn truth teller. Sometimes they are a person saying something ugly because ugliness gets attention. And it brings me to another point here. We are in an era where outrage is currency. People say wild things and act surprised when people react to them. But the reaction is part of the business model, right? You say something outrageous, clipped, you get dragged, you get defended by the comedy is dead crowd. You get invited onto podcasts, right? You get to complain that nobody can make a joke anymore. And that gets repeated. It's a whole damn economy of this shit going around. And I'm sick of that, because the conversation always becomes, can comedians still say anything? Yes, they say things every day. They have specials, podcasts, tours, platforms, production deals, and now they get a little Netflix money. Comedy isn't dead, but some of the material is just lazy. Tell the truth. That is the conversation people do not want to have. Your jokes are lame. It is easier to blame cancel culture than admit the joke was trash. It is easier to call people sensitive than admit the punchline had no depth other than reaching into a 6-foot grave to pull a dead man out and present him at a comedy roast as a movie prop. It is easier to say you just don't understand comedy than admit the joke relied on racial trauma and a dead man's final words, you asshole. Now, let's bring in the phrase everybody loves, right? Free speech. God, I love you people, right? Because yes, people can say offensive things and everybody else is allowed to fucking respond to them. They're responding to your offensive things is also covered by free speech, idiot. It is also free speech for me to disagree. Freedom to speak does not mean freedom to be from being called out, right? You say something offensive and I get to call you out about it and I'm free to say it just like you're free to say it. You can say the joke. People can say it was disgusting. You can push the line and people can say you crossed it. You can perform dark humor and people can say that was not dark. That was just disrespectful, dude. That is not censorship. That is the audience doing its job. The audience is not a vending machine where you can just insert cruelty and then receive laughter. The audience gets to decide whether your joke was cool or not. And for many people, that George Floyd line was not cool. It was an insult. Now I want to talk about Black trauma being treated like public property because it isn't. Because this is bigger than one joke. This is a long pattern of people taking Black pain and turning it into content. Chud the Builder. Luckily, his ass is finding out the hard way, right? A tragedy happens, a video circulates, the hashtags trend, the statements go out, murals go up all around the city. I'm in Atlanta. I know you've seen them in LA. I know you've seen them in Cleveland, probably even Chicago. People start writing think pieces like the Washington Post, the New York Times, right? Brands like Target start posting Black squares on their goddamn Instagram pages. And then a few years later, the pain gets recycled into edgy jokes. That is the cycle. And people like me are tired. There is a difference between discussing a tragedy and exploiting it. There is a difference between satire and mockery. There is a difference between remembering someone and using their death as a punchline.
I'm not gonna lie, the Kevin Hart roast, the funniest thing in there, which we can all probably agree, was damn Regina Hall's face. That shit was hilarious. It looked as though nobody gave her no rundown on what exactly is about to go down or to the extent it's about to get, because she was looking around like, how come we ain't throwing hands yet? That shit was hilarious. Even the cameraman started to like try to crop her out, like keep her out of the view. By the end, if you watch it back, they tried to keep her off the cameras because at first they gave her some close-ups, and then they saw her face. They're like, "Ooh!" So they took her off. They took her off like the main thing. You know what I'm saying? And then the comedian's not even trying to play with her. Like the comedian's like, "I'll pass." That was funny as hell because apparently in that little group or in Hollywood, it is quite evident. It's quite clear that Regina Hall's not one to play with, because it seemed as though people are like, please don't have her get up and start throwing hands for real. Regina Hall's face looked like on a girl, you say like you and your girl, like y'all hanging around, right? And then you say a joke or you say something funny, but then like another girl laughs way too hard. You're so funny. Regina Hall was making the face that your girl would make the whole time. That shit was hilarious. Well, it was kind of outlandish. Some of the stuff was. I was very surprised at how much stuff they let get through, because it was all written. It was all on a little teleprompter thing. And they talked about how they went back and forth on letting some jokes go, but some of the ones they let go was insane. Like for anybody, like even in the comedy space, there's like, hold on now, that's what we doing.
And in this case, it just really felt like exploitation. It felt like the joke did not care about George Floyd as a person at all. It cared about George Floyd as a fucking reference, as a reaction button, as a guaranteed gasp. And that's exactly the problem, because when somebody's humanity gets reduced to a catchphrase, we have lost the plot, people. Netflix, you have lost the plot. Now, let me be fair. Roast comedy is brutal, and Tony Hinchcliffe's whole brand is harsh, offensive, uncomfortable comedy. Cool. That's his lane. He should fucking stay there, right? But having a lane does not mean every turn is justified. If your brand is, I say the thing nobody else will say, then eventually you still have to answer one question. Was the thing worth saying? Because bold is not automatically brilliant, and cruel is not automatically honest, and offensive is not automatically funny, and controversial is not automatically important. Some people confuse backlash with proof that they are right. No, sir. Sometimes backlash is proof that people heard you clearly and still said no. Now, let's talk about Kevin Hart's position in all of this. Kevin was the person being roasted, not the person who said the line. But because the joke was framed around the Black community being proud of Kevin, it placed Kevin inside a racial joke that used George Floyd's death as the punchline. That creates a strange burden in itself, because, see, now people look at Kevin's reaction. Did he laugh? Did he cringe? Did he ignore it? Did he respond later? Hell, has he responded, y'all? And that is not entirely fair, because in the moment on stage at a roast, people are expected to just sit there and take it. But it is also understandable why people, us, the public, watched the room, because when Black pain becomes a joke, people naturally look around and ask, who the fuck laughed? Who checked it? Who let it pass? That is the uncomfortable part for us as Black people. And that is why these jokes are not just jokes, people. They create moments where everyone's reaction becomes a part of the story. Now, for the people who say George Floyd is not above jokes, let's slow down, okay? Slow down before I drag you under the table. This is not about saying any person or event is permanently untouchable. This is about context, construction, and purpose. What was the purpose of the damn joke? What did it reveal? Who was being roasted and who paid the price for the laugh? Because George Floyd is not, or was not, in the room. He was not a celebrity participant who agreed to be roasted. He was not part of the event. His family did not sign up for that. His death was not Kevin Hart's scandal to joke about. So why was his final breath brought into it? For shock. And that is why people are angry. Now, let me say this in plain language, because writing and speaking in plain language, that is my fucking expertise. Okay? A joke about racism can be funny. A racist joke can be funny to some people. A joke about racial trauma can be powerful if done correctly. But a joke that uses racial trauma without care, without purpose, and without a real target beyond the victim, that deserves criticism, my friends. And people should not be ashamed for saying so. Now, we must address the defenders of this shit, because here they come in my comment section. They joke about everybody smell the roses. They said worse things about other people smell the roses. It's a roast, smell the roses. You people are just too sensitive. You cannot handle comedy. First of all, who is you people? Let's start right there. Second, being able to handle comedy doesn't mean shutting off your brain. It means you can laugh and still analyze something. It means you can enjoy edgy humor and still know when something was beneath the standard. Hello. It means you can believe comedians should have freedom and still believe audiences have discernment. That is not softness. That is judgment. And some jokes deserve judgment. The idea that the only real comedy fans are the ones who laugh at everything is ridiculous. A good audience is not obedient. A good audience know when the punchline was earned, and this one was not. Now, let's make the courtroom ruling here, okay? Because I'm going to have a little fun with this, because I'm a paralegal, and for you naysayers that are going to come into my comment section, I want it to be clear what I have a problem with. Count one, lazy writing, because I am a writer-editor. They are fucking guilty because the joke leaned on the most obvious phrase attached to George Floyd's death. That is not clever. That is not layered. That is not surgical. That is a bumper sticker humor shock fucking thing that y'all need to stop. Count two, exploiting Black trauma. They are guilty. Netflix is guilty. Tony Hinchcliffe is guilty. All those white people that laughed about this poorly done joke, guilty, because the joke took a real death, a public trauma, and used it as a punchline in a roast that was not about George Floyd. There. Count three, hiding behind, it's just comedy, smell the roses. Guilty with an eye roll, bitch, because comedy is not a magical force field. Once you put the joke out, people get to respond. Period. Count four, confusing outrage with artistry, guilty, because making people gasp is easy. Making people laugh at something painful without making the pain feel disposable, that actually takes talent. And for the internet defenders, you are sentenced to stop using the word roast as a blanket excuse for every lazy, harmful line that gets said on a stage. A roast is a roast, but a bad joke is still a bad joke. Now, let me close with this. The reason this moment hit people so hard is because George Floyd's death was not some random headline. It was a cultural wound for Black people or people of color or people that have some kind of fucking human dignity and decency about themselves. People remember where they were. People remember the footage. People remember the protests. People remember the phrase. People remember the feeling. People remember him calling out for his mother. I am a mother of a son. I never want anything like that to happen to him. So when that gets tossed into a joke, it does not land like harmless fodder. It lands as disrespect. And people have the right to say that. You do not have to be sensitive to believe that some things require care. And I'm sorry, I'm getting a little choked up right here. You do not have to hate Tony Hinchcliffe to say he was wrong. And you do not have to blame Kevin Hart to say the room should have known better. This is not about banning jokes. This is about raising the standard, period. Because if your comedy needs a dead Black man's final words to get a laugh, maybe the joke was not brave. Maybe the joke was just fucking bankrupt. And that, ladies and gentlemen of the Rose Garden, is the part that they do not want to sit with. To anybody watching, tell me what you think, right? Was this just roast comedy, or did this cross a line that should have never been touched? Now, whew, child, ooh. Court is adjourned. The dinner is over. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I got a little choked up. I was getting so angry. It came out a lot better on paper than it did over this microphone. And I'm sorry if this was a little long, but I just wanted to touch on everything I've noticed as I watched this roast at least 3 times. And there were many other things that were uncomfortable that happened there, but I'm just going to stick to one thing at a time because I think that this was the grossest thing that happened. If you made it to the end, you already know what to do. Please like this video, share it with somebody, maybe even a cousin who knows the difference between image and integrity. Subscribe to Smell the Roses and hit that notification bell so you do not miss the next upload. And if you really rock with your girl in this channel, become a member and support Smell the Roses directly. Now.